Good morning. Good morning to everyone. So we'll sit quietly for a few minutes to settle our body and mind. Bringing our awareness to this room at this moment, to your breath or any object you may want to focus on. And in trying to focusing on that, try to do so with alertness, attention, and some sense of delight in it. Next, we will take some time in visualizing the merit field in front of us, with Manjushri as the main figure, surrounded by lineage masters of all traditions within Buddhism, including the lineage of the profound tradition, or the masters of the profound lineage, led by Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, and others to the present day. Think of Manjushri as the personification of the wisdom, perfect wisdom of all Buddhas. For the sake of convenience of relating with that principle of perfect wisdom, we visualize Manjushri here in an embodied form, sporting a smile on his face, radiant, representative of clear, vast, profound wisdom, perfected wisdom, and all of the qualities of perfections. With his hand implements such as the sword and the scripture, symbolic of the power and the role of wisdom in getting us out of this mess of samsara, as well as the subtlest residues of afflictions. Think of ourselves being surrounded by fellow sentient beings, limitless of them surrounding us, joining us in this recitation of the homage to Manjushri. Think of all sentient beings in human forms, for the sake of convenience, in including them in our visualization of reciting the homage prayer together with the hand gestures that we would like to see them to be. Yet at the same time, think of them as deeply immersed in their own predicaments within samsara in general, and in particular they are pertaining to their individual situations, all mired in suffering, and suffering generating causes, with afflictions and the ignorance, exercising firm grip on them. Yet all of them embedded with this aspiration for happiness, however they may visualize it, imagine it to be. But anything associated with happiness, peace, they all aspire to it. Anything they associate with suffering, misery, they are all same in wanting to be free from them. Think of our affinity along these basic lines. As well as of our hopes, worries, aspirations, goals. Yet at the same time, how far off we are in let alone realizing them, realizing the aspiration, and even imagining them properly. Yet in the midst of this confusion, we do not stay away from making ourselves available to each other, extending our helping hands directly, indirectly, for just about anything that we aspire to achieve, that we go about pursuing. Even our very survival is dependent on each other at any given time of our existence. Thinking along these lines, try to develop a sense of empathy, compassion, growing into bodhicitta, a strong longing to be able to do something practically to alleviate their suffering, to repay their kindness. And at this moment, we are serving our part in leading them all in the recitation, in the meditation. Remembering the qualities of Manjushri and its connection to our aspiration to full freedom from the suffering that we are mired in. Let's sit for a while, holding bodhicitta within our mind, the aspiration to attain full awakening for the sake of all sentient beings. By way of strengthening our motivation in bodhicitta, let me add that in just about anything that we do, bodily, verbally, mentally, anything, one thing that ensures it's being virtuous is whether we have a good motivation or not. Sometimes I make this distinction between intention and motivation. You may intend to do something, to sit here, to come here, to listen, to understand. But what is the motivation behind that? For what purpose? With what motivation? What motivates us to do that? That's the motivation which is crucial in determining what the action becomes, virtuous, non-virtuous, just mere neutral. It's very important to always remind ourselves of generating a proper, appropriate, virtuous motivation behind everything that we do. In a way, just at that very moment, we remind ourselves of the need of that and are willing to take it up. Just right then and there, our spirits get lightened up. Our works, jobs, services become much lighter, delightful to engage in. Just then and there, we can see the benefit of it. But the benefit outweighs those apparent ones. There will be much long-term benefits from these actions with such motivation. Among the different kinds of motivations, bodhicitta is the highest. As someone has very aptly called, when it comes to thinking big, nothing can be bigger than bodhicitta. But the main thing, making it even stronger, firmer, is to then combine it with some sense of conviction in the reality of this seemingly idealistic aspiration, connecting it with our own situation that can be applied to all sentient beings, and then see the connection. First of all, see the need of doing something, and then the question of how, if at all possible, and if so, what would the resultant state look like? Thus filling oneself with joy, aspiration, enthusiasm to work for it, particularly connected with the situations of alpha sentient beings, myriads of them without exception, the prospect of how bodhicitta can really deliver the utmost outcome, the utmost resultant state, be that in terms of wisdom, in terms of motivation, in terms of capacity, be that in terms of benefiting oneself and others, thinking along those lines, how bodhicitta really stands out as the one and the single, one and the only mindset that humans can come up with as the best shot of our intelligence and smart brain, and how that can make a big difference in our own and others' prospects going forward in a very, very assuring, reliable way. So that aspiration is aimed at full awakening. From Buddhist perspective, a state of being where one is completely freed from the two obscurations, both of the cognitive obscurations and the afflictive obscurations. As a natural law of attaining the two, one has to first eliminate the obscurations of affliction before being able to do so for the obscurations of cognitive obscuration to omniscience. For both of these, it is essential, unless one is very careful and capable of achieving them in one lifetime, which is very rare, very difficult, then we should be thinking of planning over lifetimes for which attaining precious human rebirth with all the facilities conducive to undertaking Dhamma practice, continuing it from where one had left, is so essential. And to ensure that, the only means is by engaging in virtuous actions of body, speech, and mind. And for that, very essential part of it is to know what is to avoid, what is to be adopted. Of course, in actually making the move, making a difference, one has to have the firm foundation of morality, topped up with as firm and strong basis of concentration. But on top of that, without the wisdom, one will not be able to really move in the direction that one wants to. One could be moving, but keep going up and down, never getting anywhere closer to either achieving liberation for oneself or that of omniscience. And from among these wisdoms, of course, the important thing is the wisdom of understanding the law of causality in general and that of karma in specific. Together with that, as important, or maybe even more important, is the wisdom of understanding the ultimate reality as it is, without any compromise, without any mistakes. For both of these, hearing, studying, reflecting, and then, of course, integrating it within one's own personality is very essential. Wisdom plays a very crucial role. Just as we all know, in accumulating non-virtuous actions, we very often and mostly do that, particularly that of the animals who would not do that out of ignorance, not knowing how to go about it. So not knowing is not an excuse. From the results of karma that you accumulate. And that can be only dispelled by understanding the insight developed into the nature of law, in particular the nature of law with volition being an active part of it. Both in terms of the causes causal factors we accumulate, as well as in terms of the resultant state that we undergo in terms of feelings, be that of happiness or suffering, misery. So let's once again motivated by bodhicitta, and thus determined to use this time together in sharing, understanding, reflecting, focusing, so that we could grow in our efforts, in our actual success in making the move in the right direction as we are motivated by. Okay. So in Uttara Tantra, Maitreya says this: Shirab le shen dida ki dida ni pungju shen me de ichir shirab choyi de shini tuapa de shini tuapa cho. Aside from the wisdom, there are no other means by which these could be abandoned. These referring to the obscurations, two obscurations, both of afflictions and that of cognitive type. And because of that, wisdom is supreme. And the basis for that is first hearing. Therefore, hearing is supreme. Particularly in this context of someone beginning the path, hearing is not something to be looked down upon or compromised with, but rather something to be intently engaged in. And there's another sutra quoted in the commentary by Geshe Tenzin Chodrak, or in other name, Minya Kunsang Sunam, Minya Kunsu. He quotes a sutra, but doesn't name the sutra, where he says, Rikipu, Japadandena, Sherab Jungwar Juro, Sherab Dandena, Nyumong Rapto Psiwar Juro, Nyumumba Mebala, Tuitela Minyeto. Child lineage. If you possess hearing, then you will generate wisdom. If you possess wisdom, then you will fully, completely pacify afflictions. And those who are free from afflictions, they are out of reach. They are off limits for the negative influences. So here the text itself names du maras. Once you have eliminated afflictions, when you are freed from afflictions, then you are off limits for the maras. Maras cannot reach, even if they try, they cannot have any influence on you. There's nothing to latch on. It's our afflictions which is the vulnerable part within us, which makes us vulnerable to all these influences. So with that, we brace ourselves this 9th chapter. So you got the second dispatch of the of some initial stanzas. All I have done, just again, I will not repeat this again and again, but today I will to emphasize that I'm not changing anything from the original translation, not even meddling with captions, whatnot, that I do not necessarily always all agree, even up to this point. But the one that you are given is one word file, so you can have easier way to change or look, whatever. But then the other thing to look at is compared with the original PDF copy, the spacing has been changed to kind of put thoughts together, threads of thoughts together, rather than just arbitrarily putting them in 4 lines together. But at the same time, the numbers are not changed. So that's something you need to remember. And it may be sometimes too much to go through the text as well as suggest how I'm going to change this or that. I'll just do that so those who are able to benefit from it can pay attention to it. Otherwise, you can just let it go out of the window. Okay, so we'll pick up from where we were last time. Yeah, before I do that, I want to share some light things. Light things to light all of us up. Last time I shared some story about who were the masters in the Tibetan world, Tibetan Buddhist world, who were very prominent in this teaching of Shantidevas, not just in terms of making it popular among masses, but more importantly, themselves embodying the teaching to such an extent that they kind of gained renown as Bodhisattvas themselves. So I was sharing that story. I think I left it incomplete or not so clear. So this is referring to a discussion that is supposed to have happened in 13th, 12th, 13th century. There was a great translator. Back then, translators were also as great practitioners also. So they may be known as translators, but that's not supposed to think of them as something less than a practitioner. But they are as intent practitioners themselves, renowned practitioners themselves. So one of them was Pang Lozawa, Lojue Tempa. Lojue Tempa. Stiramati. Pang Lozawa, Lojue Tempa, who lived in 12th, 13th century, 13th, 14th century. And in the course of his teaching, they had a discussion among members who, by that time, were the greatest in embodying the Shantideva's teaching, particularly Jeju, his text. And during that discussion, they all agreed on 2 names. One is Geshe Tenzin Chodrak, the author of the 37 Practices of Bodhisattva, who lived in 13th, 14th century. 13th, 14th century. 1367 was the year he passed away. So Tsongkhapa would have been 12 years old at that time. So one name was Geshe Tongme Sangpo, another was Gyawakwe Sangpa, who is a Kagyu master. I think specific Kagyu, Dukwa Kagyu. But he is well known across the orders of Tibetan Buddhism to be someone who gained Buddhahood. As I mentioned earlier also, some time ago, there are many names among the Tibetan masters who are commonly agreed, accepted to have achieved Buddhahood, but not all of them are famous. Not all of them were famous, so no, there wasn't any need for fame. So it makes perfect sense, but not all the names are thought that famous. But then, Yao Kursangpa and Yao Geshe Tome Sangpo, they were very famous at that time also, and were kind of popularly widely accepted as bodhisattvas. So those two names came up. And the author of this particular commentary, Minya Gunsu or Geshe Tenzin Chodrak, he lived in 19th century. Please, can you get this book? Unless he wants to hear the story. I think it's fine. It will, if I leave it here. It's not a tick. Yeah. So this author lived in 19th century. 19th century. Beginning of 19th century he was born, and he passed away before the end of the century. He was speaking of his own teacher, among many one teacher that he had received most number of teachings from Shantideva. And this teacher is Zapatu Rinpoche, who is the author of the work called Words of My Perfect Teacher. So he was saying that, yes, back then when there was a discussion reaching consensus on who really marveled in embodying the teaching of Shantideva and in making it widely public, he was referring to their discussion and was adding his teacher, from whom he has received Shantideva's teaching several times, complete teaching many times, and then specific themed teachings, but even more. He was saying that, like them, his teacher at this time was also very instrumental in making Junjuk, Shantideva's text, very popular. And he was making this comparison during the time of Rendawa, one of the teachers of Tsongkhapa. Uma Madhyamika was made public, was made popular. Until then, there were some Madhyamika texts, but it was not that popular, not that commonly studied, nor were there acclaimed masters. But then, due to Rendawa's efforts, and then I think together with Tsongkhapa later on, they made Uma very popular and very commonly studied text, much talked about Dharma teaching. So there was this expression. At that time, Madhyamika became everything. It has become a household thing. The way of calling that is, even if you talk about nose, there will be something to do with Madhyamika. Even if you talk about food, there would always be something about Madhyamika. It's like nose Madhyamika, air Madhyamika, food Madhyamika, walking Madhyamika, or like that. So likewise, this master made Junjuk so popular that it almost was comparable to what became of Madhyamika then. It has become of Junjuk, in that even if you talk about nose, there will always be something about Junjuk to connect with it, like that. So to that extent, he made it popular. And in our time, we have seen His Holiness the Dalai Lama really encouraging everyone to study it, particularly pointing us to the 6th chapter, right? And he has himself given teaching several times. Even in my own collection, I have 2 complete audio tracks of His Holiness's teaching on Shinju. So that's what I was referring to. And then here at the Abbey, Venerable has taught Shinju. for so long and has really taken time in emphasizing on the gist of that teaching, which is exchanging self and others, equalizing and exchanging self and others. That is very crucial, and that is the gist of the teaching in Shantideva. I mean, as it should be, because it is emphasizing the Bodhisattva's ideal Bodhisattva's practice. And it is such a relevant teaching in our time, because people are increasingly becoming more and more self-centered, more and more self-centered, and that's dragging them into more and more sufferings. And if only we could see how that is the one thing that needs to be taken out of the equation, then yes, so much would be much, much better and healed. So that said, let's look at, before we move on to the remaining part of stanza 4. I want to bring your attention back to stanza 4, beginning of it, through differences in their intelligence. In the translation, it says intelligence. In the Tibetan, it is lo, which is very general. And then looking at how the dynamics between the so-called common people and the yogis kind of play out later on. I think it should be better to kind of broaden it to something like spiritual strength or mental strength. So through differences in their intelligence, through difference in their spiritual strength or inner strength or mental strength, yogis too are undermined by progressively higher ones. So at this point, so the reason why all of a sudden in the third and fourth stanza we come upon this division between two types of beings, yogis and common people, is that we have just talked about the two truths, and then it's a way of saying, who cares about the two truths? Who cares about it? Not that everybody gets it, but who at least make an attempt to get that, attempt towards that. Or strive to think beyond the immediate needs and think of questions bigger than just the immediate needs in front of oneself. And thus leading to thinking about how we came here, where we go, how things exist, what are the different layers or levels of phenomena that we deal with, etc. So that's the reason why this discussion about the two divisions of people came up, and also the discussion about, and also this entails from the discussion about the true truths, because the true truth, the notion of true truth, is something that we want to train ourselves into, and then refine it further and further until we get to the understanding that is upheld by the Prasangika Madhyamika. So that's the connection there. That's the connection there. In terms of the main differences between these groups of people, with their eye on something beyond the immediate need, so that one could understand some deeper truths about one's existence, and thus be able to do something very effective in bringing a difference both in short term and the long term. So in being able to do that, this understanding about the two truths, beginning with very gross ones to eventually refining it further into the understanding as presented in Prasangika Madhyamika is very crucial. So even in Umajupa, in Chandrakirti's, the Madhyamikavatara also, he takes time in discussing the truths before plunging into the discussion about the selflessness of phenomena and selflessness of person in this subtle sense. He says, for here we need to take time in first discussing this and getting this right, so that then we could properly approach this discussion on the subtle selflessness of person and subtle selflessness of phenomena. So it is important to acknowledge that, understand that, and thus begin to think of the true truths more seriously. So when we talked about the division of beings thus inclined to kind of explore and experiment further beyond than the immediate need, we talked about the yogis and the common people, and we did the division on a very simplistic way by saying the main representative of the yogis would be, at the very least, the Aryas who have had direct encounter with the reality, and the common are those who not only has not reached there, but also has completely got it wrong. So the common one will be mainly represented by the so-called realists. And the yogis will be mainly represented by not only those who got it right, but also got it kind of integrated to the level of having seen it directly. So those are the two main representatives. And associated with them are their respective, secondary members in each group. That's how we did that. Right? That's the more easier way of, and then carry that division all along the discussion through the next 4, 5, 6 lines. Another way of doing that is seeing this division of yogis and common as relative. Compared with this is yogi. Compared with this, in this context, this is common, this is yogi. And then in the next level, the yogi in the previous one becomes now a common, and the other one becomes yogi. That's how then that division doesn't become so strict, so established, determined, but kind of is fluid. So I'm just mentioning it, not that I'm going to go into it, because we have already covered the main thing, to kind of alert you to certain commentaries that may approach it that from that perspective. But for us, this is easier to stick to one category, and then so within the yogis, there will be the main representative will be Arya being who has seen the ultimate reality correctly, directly, and associated with him or with her are those who precede him or her in their progression. So those who are on the path of preparation, path of accumulation, even if not yet embarked on the path before that, but nonetheless pursuing the understanding of emptiness in a correct way, or at least with the inclination and some success in the grasp of the understanding. Those will be all included in the yogis. And then in the common, not only the realists who constitute the main category, main group, but even those who may yet to be influenced by philosophical thinking, who may yet to be influenced by philosophical thinking, or philosophy, who may have not yet developed philosophical bent of mind. Those could be also included in the so-called common. But the common are those who have not yet gotten the understanding of the emptiness, let alone getting it but even kind of have a twisted understanding of it. So that said, it is important to first make this distinction very clear about what we are using the term realist, right? Because realist is already a term used in Western philosophy, and it has its own meaning there. It may not completely map up to the Buddhist. So it's perfectly okay if we do not use that term. We come up with some other terms also. But it is so important in the Buddhist understanding, particularly pursuing topics like this, which have so much to do with the philosophical affiliation. Affiliation, not so much in terms of being a party of this or not this, but in terms of one's own philosophical upbringing, and thus saying, where does that upbringing stand at this point? And for the sake of convenience of dealing with them, kind of grouping them in these different tenet schools. That's how one could see them. So take the case of the four philosophical tenets. The last two, Vaibashika and Sautantrika, they can be put together into one group. And then if you include Chittamatra in them, then they become another group. Of course, you do not have to, of course, if we bring Madhyamika also to the whole group, then the whole group would be called something else. Buddhist philosophical schools, Buddhist philosophical tenets holders. But then with Madhyamika outside, if we put three together, there is a way of calling them. And we take Chittamatra out and then just keep the first two, and there's a way of calling them. Those are very established technical terms we need to be aware of. So the two together, Vaibashika and Sautantrika together, are called Dhammanyi. Dhammanyi means, literally it means the two who propound external reality. Dhammanyi. The two who propound external reality. That means they are the two who not only says that things are not mental projection. They are not. That things are there outside of the mind. And then they go a step further in saying that, in kind of cementing it, in strengthening it by saying that things are not only there outside of the mind, but they are outside of the mind in such a way that there will be no question whatsoever of any mental influence over them in how they are established, in how they exist. And that is, they say that things have an objective reference point, building block. Things in a way, they are reductionist. Yes, they are reductionist from a Buddhist perspective. Scientists are also reductionists. They are also reductionists, and they are reductionists more along the line of the scientists, at least the modern scientists. At least, or maybe now things are changing. In physics, they speak of quantum mechanics and whatnot, so I don't know where they lie. Anyway, the Vaibashika and Sautantrika, they say that things are not only externally existing, but they can be externally reducible to indivisible building blocks of their own. So to that extent, they uphold, they advocate the externality of things. So in the case of mind, any mental event, any mental phenomena, mental event can be reduced to an indivisible, no more divisible mental event. No more divisible. Of course, minds are not divisible in terms of parts, special parts, but they are divisible in terms of temporal parts. But in this case, they can be reduced to such a level that you land on a mental event as such, mental event or mental thing that has not even the temporal parts. It is indivisible, partless mental event. So likewise, they speak of the same in terms of the physical things. The physical things, the big things can be divided up further and further and further. Eventually, one will land on a part of it which is indivisible and thus, very concretely objectively existing on its own. So, in that respect, to that extent, they advocate the externality of phenomena. So, things are not dependent on the minds, but rather they have their own objective reality, and an objective reality in such a sense that they could be reduced to their own indivisible, ultimate substratum or building block or reference point. So that's the reason why they are two together called Demanyi, the two that propounds external reality. By the way, the Prasangika Madhyamikas also say, yes, there is external phenomena. They say that there is external phenomena, not agreeing with the Chittamatras. But they do not, they accept external phenomena just for the sake of saying that things are there outside of the mind, that there are things outside of the house, like there are things outside of the house, there are things outside of the mind. And that things are not just merely projected by mind to the extent that the Chittamatras believe, where it's almost like anything can be sucked into the mind and then can be kind of released out. But nonetheless, they kind of fall within the purview of the mind. That's to what extent the Chittamatras go, but the Prasangika Madhyamikas or the Madhyamikas do not buy into that. So they say that there are external things, but their claim of external things is very different from what the Sautantrika and the Vaibashikas are claiming. So that's why Prasangika Madhyamika doesn't get dragged into the proponents of external reality when we speak of these two groups. Okay, so that's important to remember. We will come across this again and again and again. Now, when we bring Chittamatra insight together and then form a group of three in the Buddhist philosophical world, then that group is called Muemawa, for which we are using the term realist. But it is Muemawa. Muemawa means those who propound, the proponents of things, the proponents of phenomena, the proponents of things, the proponents of compounded things, or proponents of things being truly existent. So when you say, who are those who advocate things are truly existent, then you could of course count Vaibashika, Sautantrika, but even also you can count the Chittamatras also. But not any of the Madhyamikas. None of the Madhyamikas say things truly exist. Well, as I commented before also, that use to say things do not exist truly means that don't they exist at all? That's not the meaning here. But anyway, just for the sake of communication, when you use the term true existence with temporal trupa. So when we think of the three together, then they are called the proponents of true existence. So that means it leaves out the Madhyamikas. Earlier, when we spoke of the proponents of the external reality, we not only left out Chittamatra, which is very obvious. Chittamatras go to the extreme. They are kind of radical idealists. But by comparison, not as radical as Western idealists in the Western philosophy. Although there are some among the Tibetan scholars who interpret Chittamatra to that extent of saying there is no form at all in Chittamatra. But Tsongkhapa is not on that side. He makes very clear that yes, they do say forms are there, but nonetheless projections of mind. But then the form is form, not form is consciousness. But it is ultimately reducible to a consciousness. Consciousness produced latency. So what do we mean by true existence? Yeah, on a broad level, true existence. Yeah, true existence is not necessarily those who propound true existence do not necessarily have to say everything is truly existent. At least if they have some, either all of the phenomena attributed so, or some of the phenomena attributed so, that is enough to put them in that category. So in the case of Chittamatras, they do not say external things or form. Well, I don't know, if you say form, is form truly existent? Then they would say, I think it does. But what about external phenomena? No, that external phenomena do not exist at all, and they are not truly existent. But definitely mind is truly existent. And in the case of the Vaibashika and in the case of Sautantrika, just about anything they propose to be existent, they say they are truly existent. So I think the same goes with Chittamatra also. But Madhyamikas do not allow for true existence just for anything, irrespective of whether it is Sautantrika Madhyamika or Prasangika Madhyamika. They say true existence. No. Okay. But we have yet to define what is true existence. Yeah, existing, broadly speaking, to be safe, existing objectively, that doesn't go that far, right? Yeah, let me say like this: just about any way of existing objectively you come up with, they would all say yes. So how about putting that as the criteria for true existence? Just about any way of existence that allude to objective reality, be that, let me look at my note. Oh yes, be that. I looked at Topten Jimba's translation of the Illumination and looking for his translation into English of the portion in Kongpa Rapsel when Tsongkhapa lists the 6 ways of existing, 6 exaggerated ways of existing, out of which Swatantrika Madhyamikas accept 3, deny 3. Prasangika Madhyamikas deny all of them. So we can build our build our criteria of true existence along those lines. Take all of the 6 and then say whoever accepts things to be existing in all of these 6 are proponents of true existence. And then those who either say some of them who either reject all the 6 ways of existing, all the 6 ways of these 6 ways of existing, totally deny all of them or deny part of them, then they do not belong to this group of realists or proponents of true existence. But I'm still struggling to come up with a way of a way of grouping them in such a way that only Prasangika Madhyamika is on one side and all the rest fall into one group. I do not have any. Pardon? Yeah, but what about Sautantrika? Okay. Yeah. Attendance school-wise, yeah, one can say that they form their own school or they are part of one school, in which case then they will not be lower attendance schools. But yeah, I think you're right. From a Pasangabhadavaka point of view, they could be called lower attendance schools. But how about, yes?
About those who assert inherent existence.
Yes, exactly. So calling them from a Pasangabhadavaka point of view, those who are lower to Prasangamadhyamika, those who accept inherent existence, those that will definitely form a group. I may have misspoken, but my concern was I didn't find any scriptural references of calling them into this group. I haven't come across. I was inclined to using the term Nisvabhava Vad. The Nisvabhava Vad, the proponents of non-identityless. Yeah, and the entity, proponents of entitylessness or proponents of identitylessness. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that is stretched to even cover Swatantrika Madhyamika. Because calling the Madhyamikas would be little uncomfortable. Because it's already establishing that they are the Madhyamikas. They are the middle ways. So when we speak of the 4 tenet schools, we should be impartial. We should be impartial and not judging who has got it right or not. We could be just calling them by what they propose, what they advocate. And there, the term used in that spirit, the term used to call the Madhyamikas is Nisvabhava, proponents of entitylessness, proponents of identitylessness, I think. So in that case, even Swatantrika Madhyamikas are included in that. So that's why in the scriptures I didn't come across what you call a technical way of separating the Swatantrika and this Pasanga Madhyamika and grouping all the rest. Yes.
The one that is Jigme Wangpo, it's a definition, a proponent of entitylessness who does not accept anything that is established through self-characteristics, even on the conventional level. That is prasangika, so it excludes the Swatantrika Madhyamika.
Yeah, but then there is a qualifier there added.
Yes, that on a conventional level.
Yeah, but by saying characteristic something about.
So who does not accept anything that is so a proponent of entitylessness who
that's general.
Who does not accept anything.
Yes.
Yeah. Then so that's the Madhyamika, right? Then
the first one was Madhyamika. So that's the reason why I was saying those who propose. Could you repeat it?
A proponent of entitylessness.
So that is Madhyamika in general.
Yeah.
Within that, then the next one.
Then who does not accept anything that is established through self-characteristics, even on the conventional level.
Yes. So this sides with me by saying that the Madhyamikas are the proponents of entitylessness. Within that, you could then, pardon? Yeah, non-entitylessness. Yeah, entitylessness. Entitylessness. That's the Madhyamika. Within that, those who say that there is no existence by self-characterization, even on a conventional level, then that would be specific to Prasangika. The other one proposing that would be Swatantrika Madhyamika. So still, in the technical sense, the scriptures do not come up with a established terminology in separating the two and putting the rest of all the others, putting Prasanga Medi on the one side and all the rest on the other hand. Mm-hmm.
That may have to do with the historical development. Some people say that it was Tsongkhapa who really divided the Madhyamaka into two.
Yes, yes.
And of course, it was based on the discussion between Buddhapalita and Baba Viveka, and Chandrakirti's putting it in, but then he was the one who actually, Tsongkhapa was the one that actually said, oh, they're different systems.
Yes. Yeah, so in a way, we could say that that Tsongkhapa gave them the names, two groups of names. In terms of the difference, it was already there back then at the time of this person. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, the distinction is there, although there may not be a formal way of, or a more popular way of kind of putting them into two groups along the line of whether one accepts inherent existence or not. Okay, so this division is important to remember throughout. And whether or not we are using the term essentialists, realists, or whatever, one has to know what they are actually referring to, because the terms themselves, in and of themselves, are not descriptive of which group they are talking about. Particularly, these are essentialists, maybe a Buddhist term, not common in Western philosophy, but realists, radicalists, empiricists, those are very commonly used in the Western philosophy. So it may be a little difficult to differentiate the distinction. Yes.
If Lama Tsongkhapa was the one that kind of gave these two schools of the Madhyamaka their names and really solidified the distinction, then is the emphasis on Prasangika Madhyamaka, is that just a Gelug thing? Or did the other schools then take it on from the Gelug or from Tsongkhapa?
Well, it's a matter of whether we call them by those names, but in terms of distinction, it's already there. It's very clearly accepted that the writings of Rongsom Pentita, the Nyingma masters, his writings on Madhyamika is very reflective of the positions of Shantarakshita. And Shantarakshita? Rongsom. Yeah, Rongsom. Although in the texts we are editing, looking at, you have something else. Maybe you're quoting His Holiness on another occasion, but in another occasion, His Holiness speaks of how in the writings of Rongsom, there's more alignment with the position of the Shantarakshita, whereas in the writings of Longchen Ramchampa, Dunjom Lingpa, the Prasanga Madhyamika is very explicitly extolled like that. So the division, the what do you call it? The leaning was already there beforehand. It's just a matter of giving it a name. Although I'm not positively saying that it was Tsongkhapa who started it, because some even trace the term Rangyupa in the writings of I think Baba Viveka or Buddhapalita himself. in their mention of Rangyu Kita, in their mention of how mere consequence is not enough, mere absurd consequence, mere absurd what is that? What we call tenure. Yeah, but the technical Latin term. Yeah, reductio ad absurdum. Reductio ad absurdum. It must be very absurd. Even coming out is difficult. So in his criticism of Buddhapalita, he was insisting that mere reductio absurdum is not enough. Mere use of consequence is not enough. There has to be, to establish something, there has to be a rangyu kita. There has to be a objectively sustainable reasoning to establish anything, to be able to establish anything. So there was even the use of the term rangyu there. Rangyu, what do you call, connoting some kind of a objective self-existence there. So rangyu kita, the reasonings have to be infused with some kind of a strength of force of power in themselves to establish things. Mere reductio absurdum is not enough. Yeah, that's Baba Viveka in his criticism of Buddhapalita. Yeah, maybe Rongzom Pentita. Usually it is called Rongzom Pentita. I don't know what is his full name. He's the Nyingma master. But a very prolific writer and very much respected. But I heard His Holiness the Dalai Lama commenting that his writings, or even on Madhyamika, reflects mostly the position, the leanings you will see into Shantarakshita's position, who was a Yogacara, right? Yogacara Sautantrika Madhyamika. Yeah, not just Sautantrika Madhyamika, but even Yogacara Madhyamika with leanings more into, not more, but equally into the Chittamatra take of how things exist. So much so that he proposes three main meditation topics. Three main meditation topics for the three scope practitioners. Three different meditation just so the main meditation themes. Whereas in the case of Sautantrika Madhyamika, they may propose two, with the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas sharing one, and the Bodhisattva Yana practitioners one. But in the case of Shantarakshita, he was among those who proposes even three different distinct main themes of meditation on their path. Whereas Prasangika Madhyamika says that no, when it comes to the main theme of meditation, all three vehicle practitioners same. It's just a matter of what method aspect of practice they bring in that will affect the equation, that will affect which direction the practice goes.
The way to say that would mean that each of those three different themes mean there's three different objects of negation.
Yes, those three themes will be themes, yeah, in terms of what the object of negation is. That means the three themes in terms of view, in terms of their view. There's, I don't have a better way of calling it, in terms of the view, in terms of the view, in terms of the philosophical outlook, maybe, in terms of what they consider to be, the main view. The view is not an adequate English term. View, conduct, meditation. Conduct is okay, meditation is okay. View, what do we do with view? View really makes me. Yeah, but then if you call it philosophical outlook, that's again too broad. But main thing is what they consider to be, what kind of a wisdom do they propose that needs to be cultivated by the three scope practitioners. And so in the case of this, case of the Shantarakshita, he proposes three different wisdoms, main wisdoms. Yes.
So is that three different wisdoms that then result in three different fruits, three different results?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point of it, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, we better push through a few lines. Okay, so we said, out of them, the world of common, we're going back. Beings are seen to be of two types, yogis and common people. Out of them, the world of common people is undermined by the world of yogis. So undermined in the sense that their understanding is critiqued effectively by the yogis. Through differences in their intelligence or mental strength, yogis too can be said to be undermined progressively by the higher ones within the yogis. So here it will be not so much in critiquing and exposing some among the yogis to be incorrect, but in terms of the strength of their understanding, in terms of the strength of their practice, they will outshine each other. So the yogi on the path of seeing would be outshined. Do you say outshined? Outshined by the yogi on the path of meditation, likewise. Pardon? Yes, outshone, yes. Thank you. Through differences in their intelligence or mental strength or spiritual cultivation, or through the differences in their strength of practice, yogis too are undermined by progressively higher ones. So here, this undermining is not so much of completely correcting their stand, their viewpoint, but kind of outshining them in terms of the strength of it, to the extent they can address subtler afflictions or subtler afflictions. So what I have suggested changing is, by means of example accepted by both, is putting these two lines, together with the next four lines, put them into one group, six lines group. And then instead of calling them refuting objections from the proponents of inherent existence, I'm bringing the next caption ahead here, refuting the realists in general. That way it will be easier to. So that's what I'm just suggesting. So, and then defining what we call realist, refuting the realists who are the proponents of true existence in general. So refuting the realists in general. So when we say realist, it includes Chittamatra, Vaibashika, Sautantrika. When we speak of proponents of external existence, we only talk of Vaibashika and Sautantrika together. And then there are ways of talking of each one of them separately also. But when we speak of proponents of external existence, those two are talked about together. When we talk of realists or proponents of true existence, we talk of the three, including Chittamatra, together. So this section, from this point onward, to a certain extent, the author takes time in refuting the position of the realists in general, and then eventually he would taper it down to focusing on the positions of the Chittamatras. Let me just briefly open this. By means of examples accepted by both, emptiness is established. Unanalyzed, the practitioners engage in training, or practitioners engage in training for the sake of the result. There's so much to be read between the lines, and one has to bring in additional background idea here. Otherwise, it will not be complete. Basically, the realists in general are saying, you talk to the Prasangika Madhyamikas, you talk a lot about empty inherent existence. What in the world are you talking of? One, the notion of emptiness that you are proposing, that you are pushing, is not viable, or viable in the sense that it doesn't exist. The notion of emptiness that you are proposing is a non-existence. It's a friend of the rabbit's horn. And then saying, even if allowing that it is existent, it's not relevant. It's not relevant, it's not viable. Even if allowing that there is something called lack of inherent existence. But that's not significant, and that doesn't do much. That doesn't do anything significant. So those are the two what do you call, acquisitions put forth by the realists. And then saying that, that what you are proposing as things being lacking inherent existence is totally non-existent, is totally baloney, and that even if allowing that it is existent, there's no way you can prove it to us. That's one thing. The other one is that even if allowing that you succeed in proving it to be the case, to be existent, it has no relevance. It has no significant relevance in our life. So those are the two reasonings. And to which the Prasangika Madhyamika responds by saying, not only emptiness or the lack of inherent existence exists, but it is something that can be even proven. So that's the first line. Proven by how? By means of examples that is accepted by both of us. You realists and I non-realists. Yeah, both of us accept. There are examples that both of us accept without question. And through the uses of those examples, I can prove it. That yes, things do lack inherent existence. And Prasangika Madhyamika saying, you see, I will prove it. I don't have to go too far-fetched in looking for examples, but right here are examples that we both agree, and I can use them. And then saying, of course, supposing that you succeed in establishing that it exists, and you succeed in establishing it, there will be no relevance of it. It doesn't do much in terms of actually making an impact in one's life. Because after all, you should be also accepting that things function the way they do distinctly. And because they function the way they do distinctly, one is capable of one thing, the other is not. Likewise, even very, very minor things seemingly insignificant things have their own relevance, and we feel the need of them, and they are capable of functioning something that other big things cannot do. So they have their own distinct functionality. Because of that, they must be existing. Truly, they must be existing. Truly, they must be existing objectively. Otherwise, how would you account for these things on the mere basis of saying that things are mere projected? If things were to be mere projected, why can't you project the same functionality to everything? Irrespective of where you touch, everything should be able to function the same way. But that's not the case. And I hope you're also agreeing with me in this. They're saying that to them. Pasangka Madhyamika. Pasangka Madhyamika also say, yes, we do, but. And then the Pasangka Madhyamika is saying, yes. The distinction is whether we talk in terms of, whether we talk in terms of how things turn out to be, what things turn out to be under analysis, and what things are when they are left unanalyzed. There's a big difference. So it's the same thing can behave differently, or same thing can behave differently under the lens of analysis and without it. And on the basis of the thing's existence, when they are not under the radar, under the lens of analysis, the functionality, on the basis of that functionality, we can speak of the conventionalities, whatnot, and that I have no problem in accepting. Except I am saying that when it is put under analysis, not only they are not able to function the way they are, they do not even exist in the face of such an analysis. So that's what I'm talking of, not in this very trivial, simplistic way you are putting it. Okay, I think we'll leave it here. So I just opened the lines, okay? So this one I'm calling it, so refuting the realists, the proponents of true existence in general. Number A, by refuting non-existence or irrelevance of either the fact or the notion of emptiness. Under this, we will discuss the next 6 lines. And then what original translation has captioned as A will be now B, will be refuting contradiction with direct perception. But don't bother much about what changes I'm speaking of. If it's too much of a confusing thing, just stick with the original and just make sense of the spacing that I care to introduce in there. Okay.